Welcome to Staffing in Sync, panel conversations with the staffing industry's top thought leaders on today's most pressing and important staffing and business issues. I'm your co-host, Charles Epstein for SyncStream, leaders in ACA, ERC, and WOTC compliance automation for the staffing industry. And I'm joined by my co-host, Tom Kosnick, president of the Vices Group and the staffing industry's leading expert. Hey, Tom.
Hello, Charles.
Yes, straight out of Austin today, I understand.
I am. Gonna
Excellent.
catch some blues and barbecue tonight.
Good idea. You're in the right place. Anyway, today's panelcast is titled Accelerating the Performance of Your New Hires. I just want to take a moment to mention last month's panelcast, Top Gun Recruiting or Job Boards Still the Answer, which turned into a really robust 60-minute discussion. If you haven't had a chance, highly recommended. Please visit the Staffing in Sync YouTube channel to check it out. But later, not now, you need to be watching this because you don't want to miss what we've got in store for you today. Speaking of which, Tom.
Yes, last week's panel was great. I would encourage everybody to attend the stream it online if you haven't seen it. And today's topic, I want to thank SyncStream for producing this series and our co-sponsor, Essential Staff Care, largest writer of employee health insurance and benefits to the staffing industry. So, accelerating the performance of your new hires. Super excited to have our panel cast with us. There's no doubt that the staffing leaders want to accelerate the productivity of new hires, but the real question that all of us here and a lot of our associates in the staffing industry know, the question is how. The data on employee engagement surveys and exit survey suggest, and this includes staffing companies, we do not have it right. So today we're going to discuss with these wonderful leaders in the staffing industry on how to start the productivity of their new team members and to fully engage them within their organization.
Excellent. Tom, before we introduce today's casts, I just want to remind our listeners that we hold these panel casts on the second Tuesday of every month, focusing on a different topic with a different panel to share real-world experiences, insights, and perspectives related to all aspects of staffing. So by all means, mark it on your calendars. Tom?
Yes, let me introduce our panel cast here. Michelle Harbarcuk. She is 11 years with TERRA Staffing as the executive vice president. Listen to this: branch manager to area manager to director of strategic accounts to vice president to executive vice. I am so impressed, a little humbled by all that.
I've been there a while.
Yeah, 11 years, fantastic. So I've known TERRA now through the CRO roundtable that we facilitate. And guys on the call, yeah, you're up against it, man. She is a Wolverine, a University of Michigan graduate. And outside of taking care of those two wonderful children of hers, she volunteers for the Toy Rescue Mission in the YMCA. Michelle, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom.
And Mark Winter, 20 years in the industry, and Mark has worked everything from a lowly door-knocking sales guy all the way up to vice president, listen to this, of a $2.5 billion publicly traded company. So excited to have Mark here with us. And Mark, oh my gosh, this was too difficult for me to do. I went and got an organizational development degree. Is a Six Sigma black belt. Congratulations on that. I know all the work that it takes to get that. And he holds multiple certifications from sales training organizations. So Mark loves to travel because he's got 4 kids that can encourage him to travel. And he and Mark and myself, actually, we both work with nonprofit organization, and Mark also Emergency Food Network in the Pacific Northwest. So Mark, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Let's see, our third panelist, Brandon Blanton, Vice President of National Client Service Operations at Integrity Staffing. Integrity's got a great name in the industry. I was so excited to have Brandon join us. 16 years. Boy, you are well above the average for somebody at a staffing company. And why I'm excited to have Brandon here. He touches the client services side of the business. He touches the operational team side of the business. He touches the key and strategic account. So he's touching multiple teams within Integrity. And so really excited to have him here and gain from some of his wisdom. He's got a wonderful 3 kids at home. And when I asked him about volunteering, he said, coaching baseball is about the extent of my volunteering. So Brandon, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And Marshall McLeod, Business Development Manager with Hire Heroes USA. So Brandon comes from a client-centric approach focused on collaborating with internal and external partners to identify potential employment partners who recruiting needs and goals aligned with Hire Heroes, job-seeking client career interests and preferences. And a military man, military background. Marshall volunteers for Tristan's Quest and the Boy Scouts of America. I'm big, my son's an Eagle Scout, Marshall, so we've got something in common there. And if that's not keeping him challenged enough, he's got 3 wonderful kids and a brand new baby girl. Congratulations, Marshall.
Thank you. Glad to be here and glad to see what kind of value I can add here as well with those sleepless nights.
Anyway, yeah, looking forward to this, and a shout out to you, Tom. This is, I believe, our 4th panel cast, and you are really great at blending the participants and helping create these really robust conversations. And I should say, we usually have 3 panelists, but word's getting out, Tom. And everybody wants in. So yes, so today is our first SRO, standing room only, panel cast. 4 we can manage, 5 we may have to go to a 2-parter. May have to do a double header. Let's play 2, as the great Ernie Banks would say.
As long as they're 7 innings.
Yes, pandering a little bit to your Chicago roots, Tom. Anyway, a few words on the ground rules. During the panel discussion, attendees are welcome to post questions in the chat. We'll select several to pose to the panelists in the 10-minute Q&A following the panel discussion, time permitting. And Tom, I know you want to say a few words to set the stage for today's conversation.
Hey, yeah, just real quick, and all my clients, first off, this has been a topic that has come up in our roundtables for multiple years in a row. How do we accelerate the performance of our new hires? But gosh, I mean, what are we, 3.7% unemployment rate? We're still at 4.2 million quits a month. The industrial psychologists tell us we've got a 90-day window. Imagine that. A 90-day window where if you're a sales guy, you got to get money in that guy's pocket. A 90-day window where we've got to win the heart, the mind, and the hearts of our new employees to get them attached to the organization. These young managers, I mean, thank God I have my own practice. I don't have to manage anybody. I don't think it's ever been this challenging, Charles, of hiring, attracting, and then once they're in the door, how do we accelerate their performance? We have never been this challenged before. Excited to have these guys with us and the questions too, along with their wisdom and responses.
Yeah, it's interesting. The issue of retention, if there's any through line in these 4 panel casts we've done thus far, it's that topic, retention. They all touch on that at some point. Anyway, okay, panelists, I hope you're all buckled in and ready to go. I'm going to ask 2 panelists to answer each question. Then at the end, you can all chime in. It'll be a free-for-all, and we'll try to police that as best we can. Any case, the first one goes to Mark and Michelle. We will get into some deeper topics in a minute, but first let me ask you, do you have any handy tips, ideas, suggestions to accelerate the performance of new hires? And by tips, I mean practical things that somebody listening could do today, or at least tomorrow. And by the way, the others could weigh in on this one too, because we'll just go around the horn and then we'll get to the two panelists per question theme going forward. Mark, you want to begin this, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give a couple practical tips. I think the first one is, if you have anybody right now that's sitting in front of some kind of e-learning platform, go pull them up out of their chair and pull them away from that screen and put them in front of a customer. That's the first step. Because I know that the e-learning stuff has to be done, but that's not where culture is built. That's not where new hires fall in love with companies. Nobody's fallen in love with a company from the other side of a screen. Doesn't happen. So that's number one. Number two is set clear expectations right out of the gate. I think about like the first 90 days, that's the honeymoon period. So make sure the rules of engagement are clear. That's probably the best you're going to get is the first 90 days. That's when people are most charged up, most enthused. So make sure those expectations are clear. And the last one before I turn it over to Michelle, I think leaders need to think about where they're spending their time. Oftentimes we acquiesce to the lowest performer because we don't want to have made a poor hiring decision, when really we should treat new hires like we treat investments. You invest your time like you're going to invest your money, where you're going to get the best return. So look at your new hires, think about who's going to provide the best possible return, and make sure you're spending your time there and not blowing it on the folks that are coming in handicapped.
Yeah, indeed. Michelle?
Yeah, I love that. I think going back to what Tom said, those first 90 days, you gotta get money in their pocket. And so for us, a big focus is where can that person add value in the first 90 days? So like Mark said, don't put them in front of e-learning, figure out what is the special ability or talent they bring, what value can they add in that position. For us, we really put a focus on getting people on the phone the first day. So getting over that training to perfection and getting them applying their skill right away, getting them kind of over the hump of that fear that they might have. So get them on the phone the first day, get them in front of clients as quickly as you possibly can. Much to what Mark said, we have a 30, 60, 90 day success calibration calendar for everybody. So whatever position you're coming in, you know where you should be in 30, 60, 90 days. And then we're training to that. So I think if you are using e-learning, great, but make sure that you're giving the training and there's practical application immediately, that they're putting that skill and that training to use as quickly as possible.
Yeah, interesting. Brandon?
I mean, I think it even starts with the interview process, right? It's, the communication we have with our folks when we first encounter them and are really trying to sell the job that we have to them when they're really a kid in the candy store with a lot of things available to them across, right across the street, or literally as they sit there, they're going to pop up for another job opportunity, literally on their phone while they're talking to you. So how do we not just have world class on the wall, but we really breathe it into everything that we do? I think it comes with it, and then it's the follow through, right? It's how do you drive brand loyalty? It's when things go as planned and as expected, and I think that's so basic, but I think it's lost in how fast we often move day to day. We also try to hire what's right in front of it. Always, it's the right now versus what's the right fit, and backing through that. And I think, we set agreements with our employees. We talk about the benefit and measure and the actions that come along with it. That's everything from setting up their goals to the activities, how we communicate with one another. We're going to have our one-on-ones. We're going to have that undivided attention. We're going to focus on each other. It's going to be a two-way conversation. And also just how do you incorporate the behavior of your culture and also the value. And I think those things to really follow through sound so basic, but man, they're a lost art, I think, in today's world for sure.
Yeah, indeed. And Marshall, I'm gonna leave it to you to take us across the finish line on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's offering purposeful incentives, right? So, the easy way to look at it is, asking that producer to meet some sort of metric. Well, as long as it doesn't threaten the production indicator of something that isn't necessarily measured. Easy example, obviously, is the quantity over quality. And then the final big one, and I think everybody kind of hit on so many things, but to engage that employee or that producer, that team member directly. Oftentimes having that maybe senior leadership or higher ranking individual, so to speak, come in and have that conversation, that one-on-one that Brandon just spoke about, and really determine what do they need. And it may be PTO, it may be money, it may be training. Look at what that is before we start that rewarding or that purposeful incentive piece.
Yeah. Tom, any thoughts on this?
No, a lot of fantastic ideas. Great.
Okay. So second question, this one goes to Brandon and Mark. Do you have a process or methodology that takes a producer from 0 to 500K gross profit production in a certain time frame? If no, why not? If yes, can you tell us a little bit about that methodology? Brandon?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately it starts with the framework that you have with your organization. What are you looking at from a vision and from a growth strategy perspective? And then you align that methodology with the individuals that you're hiring on your team. I think that's important. It's the flywheel method. Obviously, we're all pushing in the right direction, and we're making sure that we're not pushing against one another with different different focuses, if you will. I think a comprehensive strategy. When you're dealing with this, you're dealing with sales, marketing, finance, recruiting, ops. There's a lot of different divisions, and you've got to really come together. For us, we call it one integrity. We're working as one in this synergistic relationship to be able to also support those employees. I think those internal agreements that I even talked about, both from the employee standpoint, and then that follow-up that Marshall was talking about, it also applies to even, what type of businesses to target. For us, competition in a physical market against the overall market share. We're going after smaller clients to increase their base, but first we, have to make sure that there's growth opportunity there. What's our selection process? I think ultimately too, also is, what are our offerings? Like, again, to what are we providing from a value prop? What education are we providing our clients to be able to set them apart from a very, very heavy populated time frame? And then last but not least, I would say at the end of the day, our strategy also in segmentation. You'll have salespeople. They're generally better at some things than others. But for us, I think of it's, how do we put them in their best spot, as Michelle said earlier, to shine and to be able to do what they do without, kind of hamstringing them along the way too.
Yeah. Excellent. Mark?
Yeah, so I'll give you two frameworks, one from the company perspective, one from the individual's perspective. So from the company perspective, I think it starts with benchmarks, having good numbers, knowing your numbers. So when I bring somebody in, I already know how many dials they have to make or how many cold calls they have to make in order to get them started on the right foot. And so for some period of time, we focus on pulling the quantity lever. And I say some period of time because frankly, it's different for different candidates, different people. Over time, let's call it 90 days, we switch to the quality lever. But for that first 90 days, we're focused on hit the benchmarks, exceed the benchmarks, focus on quantity, because what we're doing during that period is creating good habits that will carry through the rest of their time there. Then once they've proven themselves, we can switch them over to the quality measure, which is making sure that they're getting better at who they're calling, what they're saying, how they're interacting, closing deals faster. But I think that gets missed so often. Focus on the quantity first, quality second. So that's the company metrics now, or the company process. And it starts with benchmarks. For the individual, as far as the kickoff process for the individual, I think of it in a 4-week block. So when an individual starts with the company, week 1 is all around mission, vision, values, help me fall in love with the company fast. Week 2 is show me how my role connects to the rest of the organization. Where do I plug in? How do I get fulfillment out of my role? And who do I know in the company? So as an example, in week 2, one of the things that I would normally have people do is create their own hierarchy chart. I have them start with a blank page. That way they get to know people in the organization. And the reason for that is it's so important for people to have someone to connect with in the organization that they can get answers from. I'll talk more about that later, but
Yeah, we want to talk about that. Yeah.
Connecting them to the company is so key. Then what's my job and how do I do it? And then let me go do it with some guidance and coaching. So I think about it in those steps. And if you kick off that way, then the employees are engaged, they know what's expected of them, and they're probably doing it.
Yes.
Hey, Charles, just a quick thought. As you guys know, I do a lot of compensation analysis, a lot of compensation redesign. But Mark, one of the things that you mentioned about getting them focused on performance metrics and whatnot, this is a great idea. For new hires, have a 4 to 6 month comp plan that is a base salary plus a monthly performance metric. You hit your metrics, you get $500 or something like that. Yeah. You can do it on a graduated scale. But what it does is do 2 things. One, it gets money in their pocket month 1. Number 2, it gets them doing the things that they need to do in order to succeed. Yeah. That's a quick idea, but I've got a follow-up question, and Michelle might be able to jump in, and Marshall as well. I'm always surprised with sales managers that do not have any kind of a ramp-up chart. In other words, at 3 months, I should be at $100,000 in gross profit production. At 9 months, I should be at 150. There's no gross profit production ramp up chart or tools or spreadsheets. It's sort of like, well, let's hire this guy and let's throw him in the water and sink or swim. Do you advocate, do you all utilize any kind of ramp up tools, charts, things of that nature to both help you manage them and communicate back to them, hey, this is where you should be? And any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, absolutely. For every position, we kind of have a North Star, a KPI that position is held accountable. However, our industry, or not our industry, our company is a little different. So our sellers are also our fillers and account managers. So that could look very different when we hire somebody. They could come into a desk and gross profit, or they could be building it from ground up. And so there may be a different path there depending on the person, on how they get to that North Star, that KPI. So we've got basically a matrix that shows, here's what you need to do. You need to get to this number. And if you're not there in 3 months, then we expect to be seeing this activity. If you're already at that number, we were handed, a desk to you, then we expect to see these things from you. So it gives them a really, really clear idea of both what they need to be doing based on results as well as activity and performance.
Brandon and Marshall, any thoughts, any additional thoughts on that? Do you all use tools like that?
I think visual controls are key. And I'm speaking Mark's language right now. I think it's one of those things where how do we know if we're winning the game or not at this point if we're not seeing it? And I think even tying it to the financials, the budgets, everything that we're doing to make sure that everything has a purpose behind it is definitely something we do as well. So yeah, I agree with Michelle for sure.
And I think you also have to have internal agreement about those numbers you're talking about, Tom, right? That graduated scale.
Yes.
Because oftentimes I'll see companies that, so I'll work with a company, I'll go in and I'll say, okay, show me the performance of your sales team. We'll draw a line on the new hires and the people that have been here 2 years. And so one company that I work with today has a 7 months, $70,000 in gross profit cutoff. So if the sales people have not hit $70,000 in gross profit at 7 months, they're supposed to be cut. Well, you go in and you pull the list, and there's 4 people that have hit that number, have not hit that number, and are still there, at 11 months. And I'm like, well, that's not a them problem. That's a you problem. That's you weren't aligned on what we were going to do to hold people accountable, and shame on you. You've just blown out payroll now, right? You already made the decision. You just haven't followed through with it. So I think you got to have alignment and agreement on whatever these numbers are, but you should have your own numbers.
Yeah, and then the culture, right? What you're communicating culturally to everybody, that, well, management says this, but they really don't do anything about it. And
Right.
That's worse than having something. You're better off just not having anything and going by the seat of your pants, versus saying you're going to have something.
It's occurring to me now that the company that I might be working with is watching the webinar. So if you are, fire those people. Like, get rid of them today.
Yes. Anyway, an engineer friend of mine.
Mark, you could be an attendee in my President's Roundtable.
Yeah, I was about to say, Tom, that an engineer friend of mine used to define the empirical method as flying by the seat of one's pants. I always thought that was good. Anyway, third question. What are things not to do under any circumstance to accelerate the performance of your new hires? Marshall, thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I mean, there's a lot of things you can always do to accelerate, but the things I think to not do that we do see a lot of staffers do, adding new team members that are just like everyone else on the team, first and foremost, because they assume that I think that there's going to be additional increase, like there's going to be a non-linear effect on that overall production if we add the same exact duplicate into it. I think that's a harder one to place, but the very easy ones to look at is do not publicly humiliate or threaten a performer given lower performance or something like this. And we say that that's obvious, right? But this does happen regularly in government sector, in the private sector, and throughout, even in the not-for-profit area. We've seen that being used as a tactic. And I don't know that it's ever worked. So certainly, I think that's, if we can cry one thing out, do not do that.
Indeed. Michelle?
I have a couple of things. I think Mark talked about this earlier, being able to focus on quantity and then move to quality. So I think making sure that you do make that shift at the right time. So don't hold your new hires back from being accountable to a result. I think that makes you a stronger manager. If they're doing the quantity and they're not getting the result, then you need to step in and step up and start training the skill level there. I think another one is bad business is bad business. So I have seen new hires as well as managers tempted to allow people to sell or work on bad business. It's a waste of everybody's time. So just making sure that the business type and the job order is right for your company and that you're not just trying to get them some gross profits. And then I think keep it simple. That's the other piece. And I think we've learned this over the years, but technology is fabulous and processes are amazing and we all need them, but keep it simple for those new hires. What is the work that they can do to get results, to add value right away? You can always layer on more training, more processes, more technology down the road.
Boy, Michelle, you're back to basics, right? Just new hires. Just focus on the basics, right? It's like teaching. Brandon's the baseball coach here, but teaching them basics: how to stand at the plate, how to swing, who to throw the ball to after it comes to you.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, Brandon, Mark, any thoughts on that particular question? What not to do?
I'll play off the baseball thing. I think ultimately, right? I think say what not to do. I think even when you're, to your point, Tom, when you're teaching kids, like you explain, your glove down, the technique, but you explain why, right? And then they pick up and you understand, why we're doing it. They understand, if I don't, there's a consequence, or there's, this puts us in a better position to win the game. And I think it's so basic to Mill's point. I think we forget those often. I think, to Marshall's point, I think understanding the disc profile and personality is a huge thing. Also, too, when folks come in to understand maybe where they can add value, their differences, and how you can combine those together. I also think that leaders who are bringing folks on have to understand the current situation of their business. So this person can be a rock star in an interview and come rolling, but you've got a couple branches or a few locations that are pretty on fire at the moment, and setting progressive improvement expectations, understanding that it's not going to happen overnight, and really back them through it. Right? You put them on there, put that fire suit on them. You got to do that because you know what you set that up for. So you got to make sure that you're there with them along the way. So I think that's key.
And I would jump in and say, make sure the timing's right for those. Don't bring somebody on and then stick them with a babysitter. Nobody likes that. So there's nothing worse than joining a new company, finding out that your boss is actually on a road trip, or that your laptop's not ready and nobody's ordered you business cards and nobody knows where you're supposed to sit. That's crap. Like, cancel your trip and be with your new hire, or put them off 2 weeks. Don't be a slave to the HR start cycle. Make sure you start people at the right time and don't neglect them. That sets a bad tone.
Yeah, I had a client, Mark, that hired a salesperson and then went to Europe for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And of course, when she came back, he was gone. Well, what did you expect?
Wouldn't you be? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. The next question, Mark, you actually started answering this, so I'm going to ask you to pick it up. And it goes to mentor programs. Are they effective? If so, why? If not, why not? And if you think they are effective, what in your view can be done to make them even more effective?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you that I know they're effective. Here's how I know. A couple of years ago, I did a time to productivity study on hundreds of people in staffing. And so what we did it by roles: salespeople, branch managers, recruiters, you name it. And what we were looking for was, when does the individual feel like they're 100% productive? They're responsible for their own actions. Then we looked at how does training play into that? How does having a good boss play into that? How does having a mentor play into that? Here's the deal. There is just about zero statistical correlation between a person's success and time to productivity and whether or not they completed training. Zero, none. So we had some that went off to be great, whether they went through training or not. The number one thing that tied directly to people who were successful and had a direct tie back to their time to productivity was, do I have somebody to call when I have a question? Now, that could be a mentor, but it doesn't have to be. So, but I would tell you that a well-executed mentor program is probably the most effective thing that you can put in place in an organization. Caveat though, you as an organization might be inclined to take your best and brightest stars and make them mentors. That may not be the best way to go. Maybe those are the phone a friend people and your mentors are kind of like average. You know, that's something you got to work out as an organization, but having someone to call when I have a question right now is the number one thing that correlates to success.
Interesting. Hey, so that was how many people did you have in that study, Mark?
Across various roles, about 700.
And was that a report that you generated or developed or?
Still working on it. It's going to be my life work, Tom.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I'll share it with you, but
Okay. All right.
the numbers are, I mean, it's absolutely clear. And by the way, having a good mentor was also this is subjectively accredited, but if we asked mid-level managers what contributed to your promotion, it was I had a person. Every time I had a person.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
I have a follow-up, but I want to hear from the other panelists on the mentor programs.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm with Mark. I think that having a mentor is a necessity. So we're really passionate about it in our organization at every level, whether it's a mentor, a peer group that they can be a part of. We want to make sure that not only are they getting the support and development from their manager, but they've got peers that they can reach out to and get perspective and say, hey, what did you do when you were here? I'd love to say that myself and my managers are the brightest in our company, but that's not always the case. And so as we all put our minds together, I think that's where the magic happens. So we facilitate mentorships really at every level. So people have peers that they get to know that have had some tenure and success that can give them perspective and advice. They've got potentially another manager outside of their manager that's giving them development. We also facilitate peer groups. That way, again, we just have that collaboration. They get ideas out there. And I think the thing that I love about it, outside of just the mentorship that happens and the development that happens, is it kind of reduces the fear to say, I'm struggling, I need help. So these people are more likely to raise their hand, pick up the phone, call, ask for perspective. And to me, that is incredibly impactful to the organization.
Marshall, Brandon, feel free, comments?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think that it's one of the greatest systems that can be kind of adopted by any firm. I do see an issue though, and sometimes, or oftentimes, I see it being used as an additional duty. And if the firm doesn't have any additional resources, whether it be time, money, physical workspace, or working group, something like this, to give to that individual, I don't think they'll have as big of a payout, right? Because that's not an intentional program. And then finally, I think it benefits really the mentor and the mentee, especially if it is something that's outlined well. These performers, they're going to act as they're kind of expected to. If you expect them to act poorly, well, they'll probably act that way. Now, our partners have suggested that these processes have driven retention among both participants. So that meaning of course, the mentor and the mentee as well, because that sense of belonging. And then even in certain areas where you have affinity groups or something like this that are aligned to a particular culture, those are very important because they have someone that's, well, similar to them in a different space, different area that they can go to and ask that question. To many of the points that have already been made, reach out and look for that guidance to the next piece or next step that they're working on within a project.
Hey, Marshall, with your military background, does the military have mentor programs?
Yes, but just guilty like any firm. Sometimes it works and sometimes it's just kind of an additional duty and they just connect them to someone. But the times they do, and I did read some statistic, I wish I could quote it right now, but we have a terrible situation and let's just call it what it is. I mean, it's certain mental health concerns and suicide rate among soldiers, specifically within the Army. And there was actually a reduction just based on one simple thing. Every 3 to 4 years, someone moves everything, their family, to a new life everywhere. And all of a sudden they have one person they're connected to that cares, that has this established program. They were more likely to not do that most terrible thing, which is kind of, it's incredible. But I think you can see that even within the private sector, it's an incredible resource to have. Maybe not as profound of an effect, but maybe sometimes that does happen here too, right? Everyone's kind of got concerns and problems.
Yeah. Great point. And one of the things I love about these panel casts, just getting outside of the staffing industry, get perspective from other industries and how they do things, because it's these things work, tried and true.
Yeah, Yeah, sure. Next question. Let's move on to training. How do you train new hires, or any best practices you can recommend? And I should make the point here that we're moving through these questions so efficiently. I think we're going to have time for all four of you to weigh in on this and the last question, and probably the ones we get to the Q&A. So again, training. Marshall, let me go to you first on that, because I know that's really important to your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And it kind of dives into other areas. We've really hit on this in a lot of places, I think. But first and foremost, it's a data kind of a response-driven situation. Take a hard look at your training and a sober look at that. What does that program look like? Ensure they can answer that questions like, is this effective? Are there systems in place for those that will be trained? And of course, is this just a system for the sake of having a system? And that's not effective, right? And then also look at who's going to be doing the training. Are they appropriate agents of a particular firm's culture that you want to maintain, right? They may have their own culture that you may not want to maintain. Are they successful practitioners of the system, of the practice that they're doing? And then finally, do they want to train or mentor others? I think that's a pretty dramatic piece. Is it just for promotion? Is it just for something else? Is there a real want and interest in it? And then finally, take the time to train. So after more than 18 months of the we call them the big quit, the great resignation, right? Firms are understaffed, and our partners are. No one on this call or on this line is this is not a unique situation, right? We're desperately seeking new hires in some cases. Now, although it may be easy to just take that hire and put them into their day-to-day activities, although there may be some fantastic training potential there, it can't be absent of that training piece. Respect that individual, showcase their value and your interest in them by actually establishing the training, and put a real cost or value to that training to them to ensure it happens and it gets taken care of, versus saying, we don't have the staff, so let's go ahead and put them right behind the firing line, right? And get them going immediately, versus let's do our due diligence, let's put in the time. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit more effort for those on staff that are doing the day-to-day operations. Allow them to have that opportunity. So to recap, yeah, the training is important. You've got to do it, right? It's got to be established. It's got to make sense. And then finally, I think it's important to determine, or rather decide, who's going to be doing the training individually.
Hey, Marshall, quick question. Some of my clients have these, you go through a module and then you get tested on that module. Do you find that effective? Doing the training and then testing testing, that's probably a bad word, but certifying that they actually understand how to use the database, how to make a sales call, how to whatever.
So no, great question. So independently within my own consulting and academically, and as well as within the government, my area has been very much in curriculum development and all things data and responses to those things. So also a Six Sigma enjoyer of that area too, right, Mark? But so I'm going to say that first and foremost, as a curriculum, kind of designer, I want to know what the learner does best. So that may in fact work very well with some. So I don't want to just negate that and just say, no, that's not a good strategy. To start with that module step kind of system, as it may be a fantastic approach for some individuals. I want to determine how they learn first and then approach them that way. If there is, of course, a system requirement because of regulations or insurance purposes, by all means, right? Take care of business. That makes sense. But I would like to test them at their ability to learn and then kind of move forward. Does that answer your question? I definitely don't want to dance around it and say I don't like that, because that's probably where I'd start normally. But I do want to say that it matters most about the learner.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, good thoughts. Brandon, what about you on training?
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything is, clean input equals clean output, right? And I think when it comes down to whether we're talking about data or we're talking about training, you're going to get what you did, what you didn't do. And I think that's huge. And I think to Marshall's point, there are so many different ways that you can approach this from that perspective. I mean, we have everything from your, again, some of the lean principles that Mark plays into, like it's, the further down the chain you have, down to even hourly placement person who's literally, you're hiring for a season for a few weeks, and they've got to embrace and embody your goals as the frontline employee. How do you get them up to speed within a few days, but also not only just the widget click button, click this, click that path, but also, the scripting and the to make sure, of course, they're providing that customer service and value. think each role in each group, back to Michelle earlier, has specific KPIs, but I think they also have individual leader standard work. What do I do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? If you're a leader of people, what are the things I should be inspecting? We give each of our team members, it's basically like an open book test. Like here's the gift. If you hold yourself accountable to this and you drive good habits, you're going to see good output come from that. It's not easy. If it was that easy, it would be rock and rolling across the board, and it'd be very simple. But it's one of those things where you have to drive it, and you have to shine that mirror kind of on folks to make sure that they see blind spots and they see what's going on. As far as the method, I think sometimes we have a lighter version of a training during a certain time. It doesn't mean that you're cutting corners, but it's providing more of that lower skill, no skill items. So that way you're focusing on Pareto principle style, the main things that they're going to touch during that time, versus this big complex thing that they may only see 40% of that, 10% of the entire year. So really focus on what matters, what's the most important for those roles, and move forward.
Mark, I know you're itching to answer this question.
No, pass. No, I'm kidding. I'm playing. I get a couple things. First off, so I stole my training methodology from the Army, so I'll share it with you. It goes like this: tell me, show me, let me, coach me.
I know it.
So those, and if you break that down, that covers comprehension, that's the tell me, show me, and application, let me, coach me, right? That's how that breaks down. So what you asked about testing earlier, Tom, that's fine for comprehension. If a person responds to that, that's cool. But it always has to, whatever you train has to be both comprehension and application if you want it to stick. So where I see people shortcutting is they try to put all of it in comprehension and hope that's good enough, and it's never going to be. I don't care what learning style you are, it's never going to be good enough. You got to have the application side. So that's one thing. Here's the other thing that I would say about training is you have to know when it's done. You have to know when training's over, and you have to say it. Training's over for you now. We're moving you. You're now responsible for your own actions. That study that I told you about. We asked all of the branch manager participants, when did you think training was done? The average response was 6.2 months. We asked the same question to their managers. Guess what the response was? Guess. 4 months. 4 months. Okay, so now we have a two point something month gap where the trainee thinks they're still in training, the manager thinks they're completely done. Guess in the first year, if turnover happens in the first year, guess where the majority of it happens? Between months 4 and month 6. Is that really right? So we have to know when. Point is, we got to know when training's done. You have to agree that you're out of training now. You're responsible for your own actions. Get to work, produce something.
What's the tell me, show me?
Tell me, show me, let me, coach me.
Hey, quick follow-up question. Videos. I'm a big fan. I use them on myself actually to help train myself to do the new skills and things like that. And there are a lot of great companies out there that you can videotape a call, and then you can watch yourself if you're training sales reps or recruiters against the other new trainees. Yes, no? Are you an advocate of using videos in training?
Yeah.
Yep, Michelle.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have training matrices for every position, and all the documents and forms and processes, but included with that is a video as well that they can watch. And then what we've also done are those standard trainings. We put them on a calendar. So there's a monthly reoccurring training session that we can bring a group together. So you can watch the video if you need it 2 weeks before it's on the calendar, and then later, or if it fits for your schedule, you can be a part of the group training live. So we love videos. We've got an LMS. I think that's just one way of learning, but we also love the group trainings where they can actually collaborate, and there's Q&A. And then we all know we need a good document and process and form. So
I should ask, because you all are coming from big companies, but if you're a small company between that 5 and 20 million in revenue, LMS, so learning management system, Michelle just mentioned. If you're 5 to 15, 5 to 20 million, like how do you, and you're not going to afford, or you're not going to buy an LMS system, how do you bridge that gap, or how do you handle that challenge?
we didn't have an LMS until I think we were probably 75 million.
So what did you do prior to that?
Yeah, it was really, it was about having the training matrix. And this is one thing that I'm passionate about. You got to have some structure and organization, but that is not the end. That is not the strategy. So we have all of our managers before a new hire comes on board. You've got to be able to tweak and fit in where you're going to do that practical application. You know, is their situation a little different where you're going to train them on something earlier? So we don't say, here's your matrix. This is your path to success, right? There's intentional scheduling and organization and changes in that matrix. And so that's what we did was we gave our managers the tools, and there were videos, there were documents. We focused a ton on making sure our managers were good trainers versus just having trainers in the organization. And I think that allowed us to get by without the LMS for quite a while. But I do love the LMS now. So
Yeah, I'm trying to help anybody that's watching this that's coming from a smaller. It's a true challenge. Have you heard the term micro training? Yeah, our advocate of micro training, Marshall and Brandon. Yeah. How do you do it? How do you do it, Mark? If again, I own a small business, how do I do micro training?
Listen, we're in the world of TikTok, right? All you need is a 3-minute video. How much can you get out of a 3-minute video? A ton. Record a sales. It doesn't have to be over-engineered. Record a sales call. Do a couple role play sales calls. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Micro training is how people are consuming all information now. That's how micro is how we get our news. It's how we're getting everything these days.
I like it.
And they're more likely.
You have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
I've got trainings on the LMS where I'm like, oh, hey, that was me 10 years ago. Hey, baby. But it's still there. And you decide when and how you need to update.
Yeah.
And with the shorter volume of stuff, that's easier for them to consume too. They're more likely to push play on a 2-minute video versus a series of 8 hours, right? For some sort of certificate at the end. One thing that I've noticed that I've heard partners talk more and more about is internalizing that training, even for very small firms, right? And I think to Michelle's point, find the trainer, make sure this individual is a good instructor. They may not be the best practitioner but make sure they're a good instructor first, and then incentivize them through have a team come in, do the video, do this piece of it. And I'm also hearing that, of course, that's also going to help with retention because now I'm a valuable member of this team, right? I'm doing these things. My face is now the face of training here. And there's, of course, a whole host of individual firms will come in and assist you with that for very little money. But that's a way I think they could internalize it, have their own team members doing it, and of course, focus on those more micro, even 30, 40-second kind of training clips on how to do this next step.
And we all know that our high performing super A type personalities make our best trainers. Just kidding. For those on the listening, just kidding.
So also goes to the same thing as far as mentors, as somebody said, I think it might've been Mark, that it's not always your top performers who are your best mentors. I think it's sort of in that same spirit. So the last question before we go to the Q&A, and again, thank you panel for being so pithy. So the last question, what do you do to create a culture that accelerates performance on new hires?
And this, the culture is what we're after in this question. Let's start with Brandon.
Sure. I think for our organization, it's really kind of 4 cornerstone commitments that we bring everybody from day one into. And again, we even talk about, and again, you hear me going back to the interview process. It's really talking about it from the upfront piece and following through on it. And that's starting with attitude. That's the one thing you can change very quickly. That's the thing you own as a person from an accountability perspective, which leads us into personal accountability, understanding, what you're expected for and to do on a regular basis, what you're expected to assist others with, how you're supposed to hold yourself, how we hold each other accountable, not this artificial harmony. Like we debate, we embrace debate, but we channel it the right way. The perseverance piece that we're pushing through, we're making sure, continuous improvement model, not letting perfection get by progress, and then habit. And I heard Mark say that word earlier. It's huge, right? It's how do we make sure that we have good habits, right habits. And I think from a culture standpoint, especially, that's the tough one, right? You can have a positive attitude about it, but it's changing some of the frame, and some of that means sometimes a change in the employees that you have there. Sometimes it means a change that happens in a movement from that perspective. But I think it really comes down to putting tangible things around these elements and these programs, and to walk it. And I think that's so simple and obvious, but it can't just be a top-down thing. It has to start with your leaders all the way up to your front line.
Yeah. Marshall, by the way, you used in another question the word belonging. How do you define that, and how do you create that as far as building a culture of belonging?
Yeah, sure. That's a really interesting question. As I've recently heard some folks on exit interviews say that when they had that individual leave, they said, "I didn't feel like I belonged." What a heartbreak, right? And so to define it, God, that's got to be the most difficult question. Thank you for asking me. But I think that it's the sense that I have some sort of connection with these individuals, right? With the firm, and I don't mean just the colors on the banner when walking in the front door. I mean, what is that mission? What does that strategic mission statement state? And does it actually resonate? Does it say something to me, or was it a room full of individuals with a whiteboard and just having a good time? Does it really speak to me and the product and the things that I'm making tomorrow? And if I don't feel that strong connection, I don't think that the sense of belonging is going to necessarily be there.
Brandon, it looks like you raised your hand.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think the belonging word is key. We have the 4 B's of leadership. You've got basics, which is again those first 30, 60 days. You've got backing, which is ultimately how they feel their manager is being there for them and the supporting cast. And then there's the word belonging, to Marshall's point. It's, are you being added to or included to the ability to be able to train other folks or empowered to do some different projects, initiatives? You feel part of the culture. You're not just, you understand this is an individual contributor, but you play into it. And the last word we use is becoming. So where am I going next? What's the succession planning? What's my career path? And that's kind of how we've played that kind of pyramid at our organization. And I think to your point, Marshall, it's huge. And it's hard to define sometimes, but at the end, it's truly they want to be a part of something. And I think we've got to be able to connect those dots. So I wanted to add that for sure.
Yeah, Mark and Michelle, maybe you could bring us home on this question, creating a culture, before we get to the Q&A. I think we might have a time for one Q&A question.
Yeah, I think for us, we hire and fire based on our mission and values. That's super important. So I've had top performers who don't live the values, who don't care about the mission, and they're out because they were actually toxic and hurting the organization in a greater way. So our mission is success stories created daily, and the business that we're in is all about people. So if you do not care about our talent, you do not care about our clients, you can't be here for us. And so we can train you, we can develop you, we can support you, but you have to have that passion. You have to truly care. And so anything that we can do to tie our conversations back to the success stories they're creating for others and to let them know that they're winning, I think for us, that's been how we can really drive performance and really have that culture absorbed by everybody.
Great. Mark, you get the last word on this.
Yeah, I would say, I guess an admonition: be careful with the work from home thing. As you're trying to create culture, working from home makes it really hard. So just be careful. It's here and it's here to stay, and it's the right thing for many, many roles. But there's a period of time when a person's acclimating to a new culture. You got to get them acclimated first, and then give them all of the freedoms that they need to be successful and flourish. But take that time, really manage that when they first start out.
Great. Thank you. Now to the Q&A part of this panel cast. A lot of great questions posted in the chat. Thanks so much for everybody attending and putting up those good questions. So let me ask the panel, I'll just go around the horn pretty quickly in the time remaining. How long do you give a new hire before you make the go, no-go decision on their employment? Mark?
Not long. It's really every 30 days, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to broad audience here, but if someone, I'll know in the first 90 days whether they're going to cut it or not. And if there's any doubt during that period, because like I say, that's the honeymoon period, right? So if there's any doubt during that period, it's not going to work. 6 months at the latest.
Yeah, Michelle?
Yeah, I don't have a specific date. So we do weekly one-on-ones and performance check-ins monthly. But for me, it's more about are they doing the things in their control? So I may want them to get a result, but the things they can control are showing up to work, raising their hand, asking for help. If the work is there and the attitude is there, then we're gonna work through till 90 days, probably like Mark said. But if that's not there in the first 2 weeks, then you might be gone then.
Brandon?
Coach change. I mean, you get two misses and then you're gone. It just means ultimately in that first 90, you can really understand if they're a culture fit and are they going to, uphold the values and, to Michelle's point, hit the goals they're looking for. So that's what I would say.
Marshall?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat and say it depends, right? But I mean, if there's not a system in place, right, there's got to it has to be a system in place. These particular, things have to be met, and without those, there's some certain qualitative indicators, variables that I can put into here to say these will allow some sort of extension, or maybe they subtract from it. You don't even get to that third strike. But ultimately, to Brandon, I know you're going to love this. It's in the interview. So often we pull the trigger because, man, I just need a warm body right now. We are desperate. Is it worth the pain and the money, right? If it were my money, is it worth the pain though? For sure, because it's your pain later to have and to hire versus to hold off and just sweat it out until you find the right fit, not the perfect, but the right fit for this position, for this project.
Great point to end this on as we near the 1 o'clock mark. I want to thank you, panel. That was excellent as advertised. And thanks to everyone for joining us today to discuss accelerating the performance of your new hires. And Tom, I know you wanted to say several words in closing.
Yeah, just I want to thank the panelists because you guys have given me content for my next 7 blogs. Gosh, if you haven't read The Alliance by Reid Hoffman, oh my gosh, it's so his book just kept coming up in my head. The Alliance by Reid Hoffman. He's the guy that built LinkedIn. But geez, I love that idea about FaceTime with the client right off the bat. Get them doing something that they really enjoy. A lot of good tactical things. Tools, ramp up charts, have them, do them. Love that. Love what Marshall had said about do not humiliate publicly, man. And yet it happens all the time. And mentor, gosh, I can't wait for the study to come out, Mark. Mentors, have them. I know they work. I love it. Tell me, training, as simple as tell me, show me, let me, coach me. I love it.
Yeah.
And really some great, any size staffing company on this call is going to be walking away with some great ideas, Charles.
Oh, no doubt. Anyway, that wraps today's panelcast up, and this will be available later this week for anyone wanting to relive the experience or to share it. I want to close by thanking Essential Staff Care for their sponsorship of the series, Staffing in Sync, conversations with the staffing industry's top thought leaders on today's most pressing and important staffing and business issues. Produced, of course, by SyncStream, providers of ACA, ERC, and WOTC compliance, automation, and expertise for the staffing industry. Please join us next month for an equally lively panel discussion on building a culture of engagement. Thanks for joining us. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone.